Story time. Story time. I was going to tell you a story about what happened in an English class. I'll save that for another day. Actually, like we had to write a comedic poem, and I'll save that for another day. But talk about my first trip abroad. Um, well, my first trips abroad, not sort of with adults or anything like that, just going on my own with a couple of mates. I think I must have been about 15, 16. Anyway, what we used to do is instead of going to school, I used to go up to the local train station, Grove Park, buy a platform ticket, pretend I was a train spotter, go down on the platform and just jump trains, and I could go see where I could get to. I had a girlfriend. We used to do that with it. We spend all day jumping trains and just hanging out. It's really good. It's all changed now, but in those days you could jump trains or jump the barriers and jump things and go to places. And where can we get to? And one day I made it down to the coast, down towards Dover way, and came back, and it sort of planted a seed in my little head. See, I'd been to Austria with the school. That was the only time I'd ever been abroad. But I went to Austria with the school on a school trip, which was not too long after my father died. I think people clubbed together and gave me the money to go to do this. And I we travelled down on the train. No, we went down on the coach to Dover, got on a train on the boat, then we got on a train in Calais and went right the way through France and bits of Germany and Switzerland and got to Austria. And it was, fascinating because I spent no time looking out the window. But one of the things that really, really hit me was at Calais, when you got off the boat, the smell. It was completely different to England. It smelled of French cigarettes. It smelled of sewage. And it smelled of cheese. Yes. But it smelled different. It was sort of like, and I could feel that there was a cultural difference. And and we got on the train and I was sort of thinking, God, that France smells quite exotic, really. So it planted a seed that I wanted to go back to France. Anyway, I was in a band about age 16. And the guy's a bit older than me, thank God. A little bit older than me, a year or so older than me. And I sort of because I've been jumping trains and things like that, I said, look, we could get down to I think it was a weekend. It was a spring weekend, a spring holiday weekend. It was, I think it might have been spring bank holiday, I think, actually, weekend. So I said, why don't we go to France? And they said, how are we going to do that? And because when I went to Austria, there's such a thing called a British visitor's passport, and I realised that you could get one of these things for a couple of quid at the post office, and it allowed you to go all over, everywhere really. It's a passport. So I said, well, you get a British visitor's passport. So we all went to the post office and got a British visitor's passport each. I think we just wanted to be official or something like that. And then we went up to the station with guitars and bags and things like that and bought platform tickets and jumped trains down to Folkestone. Got onto Folkestone station, right, okay, and hid in the toilets, in the dressing rooms, in the waiting rooms with bags and things like that, and waited for a boat train to come in. So the people get on the boat train in London, it gets to Folkestone, they get off the boat train and they're fed down straight onto a boat. It's sort of like a more efficient thing, it used to be. I don't know if they still do it. But so we just joined the queue, we just joined in and got on the boat. And next thing you know, we're in Calais, actually, after getting pissed on the boat, which is quite good fun because basically the drinking laws didn't really, we all drank then anyway, smoked everything by then. Anyway, so we get off the boat at Calais, and the customs are absolutely non-existent. The passport control is non-existent, and there's this train that says Paris. So let's get on it, because it's like one of the trains that I was on before with the school a few years earlier. And I thought, oh yeah, I know this. I know the drill on this one. So I said, so we got into one of the things, and basically the ticket collector, because it was from Paris to thing, and these people had been on the boat train, and it was a boat train thing. Their ticket collecting or the ticket thing was absolutely non-existent. So we made it to Paris without incident. So for 2p, 2p, we'd made it to Paris, and I was really, really chuffed. And we didn't really have any money, and we didn't really have a plan. And there was 4 of us. I think it was Kirk, Lee, Dave, and me. And we went down in the Gare du Nord, and we went down into the tube, because we were from South London, so we knew what the tubes were like. So we went on the tubes like that, and we started busking down there as a band and playing our set, like with a couple of guitars and things like that. And it made us quite a bit of money. Yes, it made us quite a bit of money. I think it's somewhere around about, it was over 200 francs. This is so funny. I think it's probably, it wasn't 300 francs, but it was equivalent to about 25, 30 quid. Right, okay, which doesn't sound a lot nowadays, but I mean, this is 1975, so the average take-home pay for somebody was around 20 to 25 quid at that time for working. So we did quite well on that little day. So we thought, I said, look, I'm going to go to the south of France because we've got enough money, because I wanted to see the Med. That was my thing, like I wanted to see the Mediterranean Sea, So, I mean, Lee and Dave said they'll come with me, and Kirk said, no, I've made it to Paris, I've done this, I'm going to go back home now. And he didn't take any of the money, I remember that, very good at Kirk, and he went back. And it left me, Lee, the singer, and bass player, Dave, okay. So we went off and buggered through Paris and sort of like, trying to get people trying to mug us and things like that, and because it's quite seedy, Paris, and it's even back then in the 70s, it wasn't that Paris in the springtime. This was Paris in the springtime, but it was bloody snowing, I remember as well. Anyway, we got down. We are pretty good with directions, and we got down to the Gare de Lyon and got out of there and got somewhere, and we got out and we got onto a road just outside Paris. And this guy gave us a lift. Now, this guy was a hero, absolute hero. Gave us a lift all the way down to Perpignan or Carcassonne. I can't remember which one of the two, or Périgueux. Périgueux. I don't know how the locals pronounce it, but it looks like Périgueux. Anyway, he drove us from Paris down to there, and he was sort of he'd married with kids, and he was a geezer. He was a proper geezer, and he thought it was brilliant that we were having an adventure, young men have an adventure. I was sort of like 16, I think the other two were 17 and 18, so we were quite young men. And we got down to Périgueux, and it was sort of like, this was totally different, cultural shock, beautiful markets, vegetables and food and things like that. And so we went to a cafe, and we sat in a cafe, we were having a coffee, and I started playing guitar, and Lee started singing. Next thing you know, we're picking up some more money. So this is all right. This is a bit of all right. And I said, we're in the middle of the French thing, and I'm sort of like, we got to get to the sea. We got to get down to the ocean, the Mediterranean, where it's going to be hot and warm and sunny and everything like that. So I probably drove them all crazy. We could have stayed there and had a really nice time just hanging out, but we made it to Marseille, hitching, and sometimes we had to hitch separately and things. It's how we managed it, but we managed it. We rocked up in Marseille together, and that's where it all went batshit. Basically, we were in an area which was very Arabic, and because I was 16, looking about 12, and a guitar with, like this, and we looked very vulnerable. So, basically, we were being accosted, and we were being dragged off by these group of Arab blokes. Now, Lee, the singer, who was sort of like, we were from a South London council estate, okay, one of the harder ones, and basically, we thought we were quite tasty because we were from this really hard South London council estate. So this Arab bloke was pulling on me, trying to drag me away. Basically, I didn't go to the white slave trade. My ass was fucking safe. So Lee just drops him, literally fucking lays him right out. One punch, smack, and this guy goes over like his lights are out, and next thing we look, and he lets go of me, and I grab my bag and my guitar, and I'm thinking, right, leg it. We got to fucking leg it now, And as we turn to leg it, there's this police vehicle just turns up, and all these police get out, and they don't lay into the Arabs. They don't touch the Arabs, but they don't half lay into us, and they start battering us with batons and everything like that, and we're sort of on the floor getting up, shit, and back in the van, we were, cuffed and put in a van, and it's batting. And all I could think about doing was getting hold of my British visitor's passport and holding it up in the air, and waving it. And as soon as they saw it, they stopped. The blows stopped coming down. And there was one copper there who could speak English, because we couldn't speak French. And he said, "What are you doing here? This is very dangerous part of Marseille." And we said, "We've just arrived here," He said, "You have hit one of the leaders of the Arabic peoples, everything like this. He said, they will kill you, And I said, "Well, why? Well, you seem to have a good job at trying to kill us, He said, "We're doing this for your safety, Anyway, they get us in the van and they talked to us and they said, "What the hell are you doing? How old are you?" And all this And they said, "Get out of Marseille." They say, "Don't. You will not survive in Marseille. You will end up stuck." And they said, "There's a nice place just not up the coast here called La Ciotat. Why don't you go there?" And we said, "Well, how do we get there?" And he said, "We'll drive you there." So we got driven by these French police, how they swung it, but they drove us up the coast to La Ciotat, dropped us off, and said, "Don't come back to Marseille again. Whatever you do, don't come back to Marseille again." Anyway, La Ciotat was lovely. It was sweet. It was the Mediterranean. There was a beach. There was a harbour. There was a boat building yard there. But there was really, as a cafe there on the seafront, on the harbour front by the sea, and the sea was clear and you could see fish. And it's amazing. We've made it. And I remember I went into the cafe and we ordered some beers because we did, and basically having a beer, and I remember putting on the jukebox "Ain't Too Proud to Beg" by the Stones on it, and we were playing along with it and singing, and basically all the local little girls came in and sort of started talking to us, and it was all great, and I stayed there for probably a week or so. This is the weekend. This has gone down, and I stayed there for a week or so. I was sleeping on the beach and sleeping in a cave as well. The girls showed us a cave where we could stay. They had mobilettes, little mopeds, they were about 16, 17 little French girls with fags, and really different to English girls, far more sophisticated, and really. I was sleeping up in the they showed us this little cave that we could just set up and sleep in. We were riding around on mobilettes and everything. Oh, it was great. Lee went home. I think he went home actually from Marseille. I think he went home so it was me and Dave. And Dave and myself, Dave and I, we just had a really, really, really nice time in France. And then I started to get ill. I don't know what it was, but I knew I was starting to get ill. So I basically, after about a week or two, I was brown as a berry. It was lovely. It was great. Hanging out, sitting on, with French people, even going to some French people's houses and having sort of like French meals and things like that. Very, very mind expanding and everything like that. It was good. It was brilliant. Anyway, I made it back home. I hitched home. I lost Dave. I lost everybody, but I got home. I was picked up by the police several times for being underage in English in France. That was quite a good experience, hitching on my own back. I actually had a great time, actually. And a couple of nice women took me under their wing and looked after me. Anyway, I made it back to Dover and just got off the boat and basically showed him my passport. And the guy said, "Who are you travelling with?" I said, "I'm on my own." And he just rolled his eyes and just kicked me through. So I got home, and as I knocked on the door, my mum opened the door, and I literally collapsed through the thing like that. And the doctor was called, and he said, doctor sort of like tests me and does the other thing. He said, "Have you been abroad, have you?" And I said, "Yeah, I've just come back from the south of France." And my mum said, "No, he hasn't been abroad. He's," because I didn't tell my mum where he'd gone, like, you know. I said, "Yeah, I've just been to the south of France, and I picked up some bug there that you can't get from things. It's something to do with cow's milk and the way they pasteurise or don't pasteurise milk and everything like that." But anyway, he said to me, "This is going to hurt." And he gave me a penicillin shot up the arse of my cheek of my arse, like, and he said, "Bite the pillow," like, "Oh God, that fucking hurt." But it sorted me out. But that was a good little adventure, and that sort of set the scene for me to later on, in about a year or two's time, to move to France for a couple of years and set up there. And I'll tell you some of the stories about what happened when I moved to France in a couple of years' time. That quick story from school. When I was I stopped going to school when I was about 14. Yeah, that's the last time I really went to school. And when I was about 13, I think I must have been, I had an English teacher that I hated. She was really, really small, little woman, probably only about 30-ish, but she was really, really, really unpleasant. And she didn't like boys, and she didn't like and she was just sort of like, and I was at the bottom of the class for the English class. I think they call it dyslexia nowadays, but I mean, back in the day, they call it stupidity. And I qualified 100% for it. So I'm not a victim. I'm just stupid. Anyway, she said one day you have to write a comedic poem. And so I did. And I'd written this poem, and I was reading it, and I was buckling over with laughter. I was crying with laughter. And she said, "What's so funny, Adlington?" And I said, "Well, this poem I've written is very funny, miss." And she said, "Can you read it out to the class?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to read it out to the class." I said, "It's just funny, and just take it." She said, "Well, if it's so funny, we'll be the judge of that. Laughing at your own jokes is not very, very, clever or thing." And I sort of said, "Well, I don't really want to read it out, miss, because I get into trouble." And she said, "Read it now." And she said, "Stand on your chair and read it." So she made me stand on my bloody chair and read it. Like, okay. So I get up on the chair, and I read this little poem that I wrote. And to be quite honest, I'm trying to read it and not laugh. You know when you're absolutely pissing yourself. And it wasn't so much the poem, it was the whole situation. Anyway, this woman was a complete prude and a complete sort of, straight-laced, things always done up right, like this, really uptight. So I said, "Mary had a little bike. She rode it on a plank. Every time the wheels went round, a spoke went up her mank." At which point, she exploded. And the class exploded, like, it was hilarious. And she came running over, like, and she sort of like pulled me off the chair and grabbed me by the ear and was dragging me out by my ear, which I was still in apoplexy of laughter, like, I couldn't sort of like think. The class was in uproar. She drags me out of the class, and we're only sort of like a second classroom away from the headmaster's office. And she drags me down some steps to the headmaster's office. and banging on the door of the headmaster's office, like, you know, and he's probably got things to do and everything. Anyway, he opens the door, and she comes in, and she said, you know, she's screaming like, really, really saying, I told him to write a funny. He writes an obscene poem. Obscene, it's obscenity. He writes obscenities, like, you know, and he thinks it's humour, like, you know. And the class is still, you can still hear the class laughing, like, you know, it's still going, like. And he said, oh, well, what is this poem then? And he said, can you read it out to me? And I said, no, not again. Not again. Anyway, so I read it out again to him. And he turns around and looks out the window, and I can see his shoulders going. I mean, he's crying with laughter. And he controls himself, and he says, I think you best go back and sort the class out. I will deal with this. And she goes storming out, and basically he looks at me and he said, there are things you can do and things you cannot do in front of women. And I said, I'm sorry, she asked for it. And he said, can you not do this? He said, my day's upset, my day's bad enough already, my day's, you know, he said, can you go in sort of like feeling like that? He said, I want you to go back in there and tell them I gave you 6 of the best, okay? You know. And he was still chuckling. Yeah, so Mary had a little bike. She rode it on a plank every time the wheels went round, a spoke stuck up her mank. That made me laugh, that did. Anyway, I went back in the class and sort of pretended that I'd been caned 6 times, and she was going, well, that will teach you a lesson, and that will teach you. And I had to stop going to school. I couldn't cope with it. But anyway, there are nice stories today, okay? Have a good day and enjoy yourselves.